All right. Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with with today's webinar. I am Zach Lust. I'm with 10th Muse Design. Thank you so much for joining us today as we kind of explore how to make your website a functional sales tool. Just some brief notes to be able to get the conference going. Please make sure that your text box is open. You can do this if you go up into your menu items and you can select a text box underneath the More command. And feel free to ask any questions throughout the webinar inside of this box, and I'll kind of stop after every section and just see if there's any questions and answer them at that time. Also, please make sure that your computer, either phone or computer speakers, are muted. And be sure to turn off your video throughout the conference. We will open up the conference at the end for any questions, since that way we can drill into anything that anybody has on this webinar. So, to really start things off, guys, let's talk about technology as a whole and how it shifted our community and our society. It really has changed everything. We interact differently, we shop differently, we research differently. Google is one of the first things that we go to when we have questions these days. And so it's really important to understand, the type of role that this plays out, with websites and in the way that we choose to market to our communities. It really isn't any big wonder why businesses are turning towards digital mediums instead of the more traditional, like magazine ads and newspaper ads. They're starting to turn more towards the digital advertisements, and this is because of a lot of different reasons. But primarily that's the way that people are interacting now. And two, it also gives you just an enormous amount of tools to be able to see what's working and what's not. The analytics are incredible online these days, and understanding what marketing channels are working effectively for you and what aren't is really what gives digital mediums so much power. So with that kind of understood, I'd like to just recap as far as where we are in our webinar series. To date, we have had 2 webinars, so this is the third in the series. The first really talked about the overall marketing strategy. And inside of this, I went through and laid out as far as, if you were to compare the marketing body, to a person, the brand would be representative of the soul. It's something that you can't see or touch or put in your pocket, but it's definitely something that you can feel. The heart, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is the website. This is the tool that pumps those leads throughout the body. It educates them, it identifies the value, and ultimately it sells. The brain is similar to a CRM, which is a customer resource manager. And what that does is it warms leads up over time. It educates them. It gives them small amounts of information instead of large amounts of information based off of the information that they're interested in. So the brain adds the intelligence. That's where the CRM comes into play. And then finally, we learned about marketing and how those are the arms of the body. Those are what bring in new leads into that system, so that they can be educated and go through the entire piece. The important aspect about the marketing strategy is that it's cohesive. It builds on each other, and it's progressive in nature. So the more we invest into the entire system, the better the results will be with our marketing and our sales. So the first webinar that the second webinar that we had was related to the branding. And in this webinar, we learned about how a cohesive forward face and really dialing into what your energetic connection with your audience is what's going to provide them with the most value. It's also what's going to connect them and interest them into joining you. So branding is essential. It's really the first step to developing your marketing body. It really starts with your branding aspects. And Kelly Lust during the last webinar really went through that in detail. And if you missed that, we can easily get you a link so that you can catch up and kind of see what that looked like. Today's webinar is going to go through, really about creating a digital sales tool. Guys, anybody can create a website. I mean, I can go onto Wix and 4 hours later have a website in my hands, but it doesn't mean that it's actually going to sell. It doesn't mean that it's actually going to convert a user into, taking the call to action from you. And so it's important to understand what type of components are involved in actually creating a sales tool versus just a website. The majority of websites out there, and especially with small entrepreneurs, are really just business card sites. These are sites where you give them your business card or you tell them to go to your website, and it gives information about you and maybe gives some credibility as far as who you are. But beyond that, it's really not capturing leads or processing leads or allowing them to take some type of call to action. And so this is what I'd like to go into today, is really how to take your website from a state of just a business card and really turning it into a sales tool that can start to generate sales and work for you. It really all starts, like we're going to learn about the visibility. We're going to learning about how to implement brand within your actual website. We're going to learn about, how to put a definite call to action, how to integrate, what the difference is between themes and custom sites and why it's important to know that off the get-go. And also about, some of the costs associated to that, like what should I be paying for a theme site versus what should I be paying for a custom site? And then, really how to tweak that website over time to be that perfect sales tool. So those are the adjustment periods where we have to tune it in to that target audience and learn from the user behavior. Let's start it off with visibility, because guys, if a website isn't seen, it has very little purpose. Nobody's going to come to it. Nobody's going to click on it. Nobody's going to take the call to action. So being visible is one of the key pieces that we have to consider when building websites for our clients. Visibility is a little bit complicated these days, mostly because, it all goes through search engines for the most part. And Google, being the largest of those search engines, is pretty much the king of data. No, they deserve to be. Google rocks. They do it right. They've added an enormous amount of value. Users all over the world use Google daily to be able to answer questions and find information that they're looking for. And it really has become a staple and a best friend. But for businesses, it can be a little daunting. I mean, Google, as far as it is, small business owners know that if you're at the top of Google, you're going to have excellent resources and people constantly flowing through your website. But if you're not, you really don't get that type of attraction. And so there's a rush to be at the top of Google to be able to capture those leads. And it's a little daunting, especially for new entrepreneurs that are getting into it, to be able to get that type of visibility and traction. And so we'd like to start there. First off, we need to pull back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz, because Google really isn't this ambiguous force that nobody can understand. They aren't. They're just like every other company. They have customers. They're trying to provide a quality service to those customers, and they're trusting the results of their searches to be able to represent their brand. Now think about that. That's an important thing to do. If you were Google, you would dial in your algorithms as well. Because if somebody jumps on Google and doesn't find value in the searches that they're finding, guess what? They're not going to use Google anymore. So Google has certain expectations for you to be able to represent their brand. And I'd like to go through those briefly. Our next webinar will really be about SEO and SEM and digital marketing tools that will go into this a lot deeper. So realize that this is just a summary of this very, very deep topic. But it's important because when you build a website, you need to consider visibility primarily. You need to build it into the cornerstones of your website. And so that's really what we're able to offer. The first is quality. Google wants their users to have a quality experience. It needs to load fast. It needs to be responsive. Did you know that 40% of customers will leave a site that takes longer than 3 seconds to be able to load? That blows your mind. That bounce rate is astronomical. So loading of the site needs to happen quickly. I mean, here at 10th Muse, regardless of the content that is on the actual page, we strive to get a load time of under 2 seconds. In fact, we try for under a second if at all possible, because that user interactivity, that crisp load just spells quality to your user. And in a day where impatience is rampant, it's really important to be able to get people to where they're going quickly. The other aspect is having a website that will work on all the different devices that you have, whether it's a mobile phone or a tablet or a desktop computer or a giant screen TV in a conference room. Your website needs to be able to look amazing. And sometimes it takes coding that website in several different ways in order to be able to get it to stack properly and view properly. Sometimes elements need to disappear that just aren't mobile friendly, whereas the desktop can have more of a robust system and interactivity for the customer. So that's really important. And Google looks at that. If it's not visible on cell phones, which 60% of the web now is traveled with cell phones, Google is not going to trust you to be able to provide that quality experience for their customer. The next piece is relevant. They say that content is king, and it still is. Content is king, but quality content and content that is optimized for user search behavior. Everybody searches Google differently, and understanding how a user searches Google is really important in order for you to have a web page that is relevant to that. And so that's, this can be implemented into your images and your videos, into your copywriting, into your metadata, all of your tags. Keywords need to be placed in there to be able to show Google what this page is about so that users can find it quickly and easily, and so that Google can index you properly and get your page up to that top. Finally is being reputable and credible. And reputation has strikingly taking a close second to content these days. It's something where Google is looking at reputation as incredibly important. Your reviews can come from places like Google, Facebook, Yelp, TripAdvisor. All of these count, for the search engines as far as reputation. And then we also have to think of how much traffic is basically flowing through your site. If you have more traffic and a lower bounce rate, then Google finds you as more reputable and more applicable to those customers. And so you can kind of see the catch-22 here, though, because if you're a newer company and you don't get a ton of traffic already, how do you get that traffic to then show Google that you're reputable, right? That's kind of where the advertising and the pay-per-clicks and driving people to the site come into play. And then it gets easier and easier over time as Google sees that your site is actually a reputable site to send people. And then on the credibility side, it's really linking into a larger picture. So this might be your social media avenues like Facebook and Instagram. It might be listing sites like Yellow Pages or TripAdvisor, or it might be like Google My Business, which every business should be registered on at this point. These are all ways to be able to link into a larger picture, create that indexing, and be able to drive people into your site. So visibility is a big task, and like I said, we're going to have a webinar strictly on that, and marketing and getting people into your website and visible. But that's only one piece. The next piece to the chapter really comes into, well, once they land on your website, then what? How do we show the value? How do we convince them that this is the right pathway for them to be able to take? This is tough, and it really comes back down to your brand. We're not shooting for every single fish. We're not looking to land everybody onto your website. We're looking for the right customer that's looking for that very specific service. And when they land there, you need to be able to tell them that this is what I do clearly. You need to tell them why you do it clearly. You need to show them what you do. And you need to be able to guide them through to a call to action that doesn't allow their walls to prevent them from doing it. I mean, psychologically, think about when you go to a website and you jump onto a website where there is just an enormous amount of text on the homepage, or, there's, the idea is confused and they're talking about lots of different things in one place. It overwhelms you. And psychologically, on a subconscious level, we put up a wall and say, man, we just don't have time to do this right now. I don't have time for this. And I bounce and I go to another website that's a little bit cleaner and really addresses the issue that I need. Websites need to, really take this into consideration. Simplicity, a focused approach on one topic at a time is extremely, extremely important. And getting people to lower down their guard of, hey, this does pertain to me, I do see value in this, is really what your landing pages should do. It should convince that user that they have permission to be able to invest the time to be able to learn if this is the right, the right solution for their need. And that's how we get users from that first drop in to be able to then go to those sub pages and learn a lot more information about the user as they go. And we do this through lots of different ways. Imagery is extremely important, and with a really branded website, all of the imagery is actually spelling out what your user needs to be able to see and understand from the content as well. It's not just copywriting. Bringing them through, spacing out that copy so that it doesn't overwhelm them. Imagery should be used across every single page, but in a way that it's more of a narrative. For example, when I land on a website the very first time, the first thing I do is I skim that home page for the titles and for the images. And I put it through a test and I say, does this actually apply to my urgent need? And if it does, I stick around. And maybe I take one of the routers to one of the subpages and be able to learn more about that company. And then ultimately I learn about your value. And then I say, yeah, this is the right company I want to either purchase or I want to give over my information so that I can stay in touch. But it isn't just the content, it's also the interface. On the interface side, we have to think in terms of who your audience is and what makes sense for them to be able to navigate your site. Think about it. If we have an audience that are retirees and we give them a Silicon Valley type of site where it's all sleek and clean, it has that cool hamburger menu at the top, but it's a simplistic site, there's not a lot there, they're not going to know how to use it. They're going to look at it, it's going to frustrate them, and they're going to bounce. But if you turn that table around and you give, somebody who's a techie with Silicon Valley, a site where everything's big and bold and everything has, the menus are all listed out clearly, they're going to think, how antiquated is this? This was cutting edge in 1995. I don't find any value with this. And so understanding your audience and putting a website together that's specific for that audience is absolutely crucial. And again, that all comes back to your branding. Who's your audience? How do we connect with them? How do we give them the best tool that they can use easily? Now, copywriting is kind of a subject of its own. And copy is one of those things where it's like we're literally walking a tightrope. On one side, too much copy, bounce. People will take off. Not enough copy? Well, you can't create the emotional connection and they don't find value. Bounce. It's also hard to index. So you have to have enough copy to be able to be indexed by Google for visibility, but not so much that it overwhelms the user to the point where they don't have time to read it. So copy needs to be impactful, yet create some type of emotional connection, some type of energetic connection with your audience. It's a real skill to be able to write for the web. It's very, very different than any other medium. But if you can nail it and you can really hone in your copy to that level, it really is impactful and people will find a tremendous amount of value from you. I know internally, our copywriter will, write it once and then review it several times and just boil down that information to what's absolutely needed. And then go back and actually test for that emotional connection to be able to make sure it's there. We've got lots of tips on copywriting. So if any of you have questions about that or need references, please reach out to us and I'd be happy to send those over to you. And then the last piece, we talked already a lot about the user experience and just, kind of the pathway of flowing through that website, giving yourself permission to be able to do that. But that's the psychological piece to it. It's the way that the website is structured so that it tells a story and it brings them in slowly and it warms them up to the idea and then it gives them the information that they're interested in. Guys, it's the quickest way to get people to the information that's relevant to them. Plainly. If it takes too long for them to get there, then they get overwhelmed and they get bounced, or they get lost and then they bounce. And so creating a really intuitive, easy website for them to be able to get to the information that's pertinent is really what our goal is at 10th Muse. And this is an example of what that user experience might look like. Jen, during the next meeting, we'll go into great detail of this, but this is what analytics look like through Google, showing the map of where people land on a web page and then how they interact with that web page over time. We're going to talk a little bit, a little bit later in this webinar about analyzing user behavior and tuning in your site. This is one of the tools that we use to be able to do that. But this kind of shows, how users will interact with your site, what's important to them, how they flow through it. How should we organize the website so that it's best tuned in for them? So every website, every sales tool needs to have some type of call to action. This call to action at a really simple level might just be, hey, contact me, here's a contact form, or call me, here's my phone number. But on a more effective level, these also have the ability to allow users to take action immediately. Like if I'm a service organization, I want to be able to make it to where they can schedule with me that moment if they want to. If I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a backache, I don't want to have to call at 8 o'clock the next day when after I've gotten up at 6 and I've gotten my kids ready and pushed out for school and I'm just showing up to work maybe 5 minutes late because it's a crazy day. I'm not going to remember about my sore back and I'm not going to remember to schedule an appointment with you. If I had the opportunity to do that at 3 o'clock in the morning, I would have, and then it'd be on my schedule and I'd be ready to go. So creating that immediate call to action is extremely important, especially for an effective sales tool. If you're a nonprofit organization, for example, the call to action might be donate now, and then giving them the ability to just go ahead and donate money to you, or to be able to get involved. Maybe you have an events calendar of the upcoming events and ways that people can donate their time or their services. If you're a widget manufacturer, or a retailer of widgets, allow them to purchase that right from your site. Allow them to take that call to action at that moment and be able to carry forward. So call to actions can be built in throughout your site too. It shouldn't just be one page at one place. Allow users to be able to see that as they're actually navigating your site. You never know what section is going to be that sales, that tipping point for your customer that says, yep, this is the right customer. I want to go ahead and do this. And when they get to that tipping point, I want them just to be able to look down, see a button, and take the call to action. That's going to ultimately lead a lot more conversions for you and a lot more sales. Now, we talked about a lot of stuff so far as creating a functional sales tool. I'd like to stop real quick and just see if there's any questions out there that people have that I might be able to answer at this time. If you have anything, please go ahead and enter it into the text box and I'll go through it. Okay, I don't see anything in there at this point, so I'm just going to keep going, and we'll of course open it up for questions at the end of the conference as well. The next piece is how do I actually create this? How do I actually create the sales tool? How do I go about forming this? Because there's lots of different ways that we can create a website today. Something as simple as Wix, where here's my image and my text and just put it into the shell and click go, choose my color. A mediary step might be like a WordPress theme that you can purchase, and you customize it to meet your needs within that specific theme. And then there's custom websites, which are a lot more tailored towards your brand. These options really come with some pros and cons, and I think it's important to understand on a short-term level versus a long-term level what those actually entail. So let's talk briefly about themed websites, because a lot of young companies, a lot of new entrepreneurs look at the price tag of a custom website and go, wow, yeah, it's definitely out of my budget. I need to tone it down a little bit. And they're great for that. I mean, I could get you a theme site up and going in just a couple weeks. So they're really fast to be able to create and get live. They're also really reasonably priced. A design theme site, if you were to hire a designer to do that for you, would probably start off around 1.5K, maybe 1,000 in some markets and maybe 2,000 in other markets. They're relatively inexpensive. But they have some costs associated to them as well. And I think that it's important to be able to discuss those. The first is really related to security. Think of it this way. I sell my code for the website out to the universe so that people can grab that code and be able to make their own website based on it. But I also sell it to people who want to exploit those websites in order to be able to do whatever they want to do with it. We've seen a lot of websites hijacked, if you will, where it's taken over, and suddenly your service organization is now peddling Viagra for a Canadian company, and you're like, how did this happen? And it's because your website's been exploited. Anytime that code is sold to the public, it can be reverse engineered, and those that want to do ill with it have the keys to the castle to be able to do that. Which is why themes have such a hard time sometimes with going up and down. They'll get hijacked, they'll get hacked, then you have to reset them and reload them based off of the, like original code that basically came through. They're also a little bit slower to load. So remember a little earlier in this webinar, we were talking about that 40% bounce rate for any sites over 3 seconds. Wow, that's huge. Most theme sites, because they are multiple purposes, or they want to give those flexible options to the user of having this section but maybe not this section. If you think about what that looks like behind the screen, it is just a nested if after nested if statement. It's a ton of code in order to be able to for that processor to be able to choose through in order to be able to load that page. And as a result, that page loads exponentially slower. So single purpose sites will load a lot faster than sites that have multiple purposes. It's kind of the takeaway with that. Theme sites aren't really all that flexible either. Like they're really for one purpose. You choose a theme based off of what you need. You enter in your information into that. But if you choose to add on to your functionality, like let's say you're a service provider that then decides to add some type of events blog onto their website, you really won't be able to do it without starting over, because any adaptations that you make to that theme will be lost or will be hijacked every single time that you update it. And that's what causes websites to break more often than not, is that you get slight modifications to the theme, but then every time the theme upgrades, it doesn't take into consideration those modifications. So as a result, it causes your website to snap. It's not the end of the world when your website snaps. You just have to go in and fix it, or pay somebody to go in and fix it. But those are all additional costs to you over a period of time. So definitely something to consider. On the custom sites, we really don't have the weaknesses with those. It is single purpose. It's branded specifically to your brand. So, you're able to expand your website as you need to, or adapt to your changing business as you grow. These are really important. It also gives you all of the security features as well, knowing that code has never been sold to a third party. You have the security of knowing that your website as it exists will last for a long time and really won't be compromised. So websites on the theme side, again, are about, 1.5K on average, and custom websites to start off with at a real base level is right around $4,000. So it's definitely more expensive. Overall, though, we feel like custom websites really do a much better job at being a sales tool. And so that's kind of why we've chosen to go the more custom route. I'm going to pause for 1 second. I've got one question that basically came in from Lucinda. It says, can all the stuff you've mentioned, SEO, etc., be added to an existing website, or does it have to be done from scratch? That's a good question. And the answer is yes. SEO can, any website can be optimized. So we could go into your existing website. We could look at the copy, all of the content that's within there. We could change the names of the images, upgrade, all of your header tags to be optimized with those keywords. We can create metadata, and basically optimize your site. Most themes are updatable as well. It's not just custom sites, but some of them are a lot harder to work with than others. So it just really kind of depends on the theme that you're on. Custom websites, you can, at any time, you could go in and be able to do that. Also realize that this is, when it comes to SEO is kind of an ongoing process. It kind of depends off of, what your competition is doing, what type of keywords are there, and what type of demands are for those keywords. And so sometimes keeping an eye on those pages and just making sure that they're performing the way that we're expecting them to perform is really important. And then being able to make tweaks to them over time. Jen Reed, again, will have an entire webinar on just this, so that it really dives into the details so that you can understand. It is really a good piece on that. So let's talk real quick about the last step with websites as far as creating a functional sales tool. At this point, we have a site that is visible, and we have a site that is branded to your target audience and is really attractive to your target audience. Now it's maintaining this. It's learning from our users. Your users will tell you what they like and what they don't like. They're going to tell you what's working and what's not, where their interests are. They're going to tell you how to, make your site as far as hierarchy, what data should go where on that particular site. So we need to learn from those users. And there's awesome tools out there to be able to learn from those users over a period of time. We call this the adjustment period because this is really where we kind of fine tune your machine into be that perfect sales tool. It really is. Imagine this for just one moment, okay? Imagine that basically you had the opportunity to hire a salesperson that was perfectly tuned into your audience, perfectly tuned into them, okay? And you could, at any moment, have this person go out and represent you, from the clothes that they wear to the way that they speak to that customer, to the way that they, are able to represent your services and your products. And every customer that basically they talk to, if they were the right customer, found a lot of value from them and decided to go ahead and buy, okay? How much would you pay for somebody like this? On average, we're talking about a $50,000 base salary for salespeople across the United States, and those are for just a salesperson. And then the commissions and the, all of the extra, labor burden that basically is associated with those. You're pretty expensive pretty quick. If you were to take a website, okay, and fine tune this website right off the get-go, really build something that was built for visibility, and really built to, be branded specifically to that target audience. And then you spent a year or even 2 years and just really fine-tuned that machine to be absolutely perfect. It's a one-time cost. Even if you had a really awesome website that was just kind of a brochure type site, you could get into that for roughly about $10,000. And then, optimizing it over a period of time, maybe another $5,000 over that period. And have this really awesome sales tool that's actually landing leads. And then if you were to drop another $10,000 of marketing into that to really advertise and bring lots of people into that sales funnel, man, I mean, your sales would be a lot higher for literally a fraction of the cost. And it's a one-time type of investment instead of, hey, I need to pay this person every single month. So it's just a thought. Websites really can be that awesome of a sales tool. It just takes time to be able to get them into the position to where they can be that for you. A lot of tricks to the trade as far as dialing your sales tool. One is just kind of surveying, looking at the call to action. How many people actually complete that call to action? Do we need to change the way it looks? Do we need to change where it goes on the page, or maybe dress it up in a different way? We can test it on new users and see if it's intuitive to them. Actually watch new user behavior go through your website, see where they're hovering. Literally, the tools out there, you can actually watch them hover over content and be able to see, are they interested in this or are they not? Where are their eyes focusing? How do they get there? Test it on the mobile and desktop. Is the user behavior the same? Or are we losing more people on mobile because it isn't intuitive? And then mostly, are users really happy with the services they get? So surveying, your users on a regular basis would be really helpful to learn how we can tweak that. And then tracking. Google Analytics and Search Console are amazing tools to be able to understand the interactivity of your user and how they work. Being able to dial in that website to that perfect sales tool. As far as like change and pieces like that, we need to be able to make sure that the content is aligning with visibility. And so sometimes adapting your website is just like, hey, do we need another web page here that really covers this area that we're missing? Or are people bouncing because they don't have, enough reputation from us? Are they going and searching us on Google and they're just not able to see if we're reputable enough? Maybe adding a reputation page to your website would help alleviate that. So the only way that we can do this, and over a period of time, we'll build a website for you. But it's just one piece of the puzzle. Unless if you really look at that over a period of time and learn from the users, it's just our best guess, and it's only that. So please plan on adjustment period and make, really that kind of fine tuning into the future. So let me go ahead and look at some of the texts that have come through. One second here. So this one is from Lucinda. Lucinda says, hey, you've looked at my website. Do you know if I have a themed website or a custom? Hers is a themed site. It was purchased off of Theme Forest a while back, which is a manufacturer of theme sites. That helps with that question, Lucinda. And then it looks like from Eric, I have, for the computer morons out there, is there training on how to use Google Analytics, etc.? The answer is absolutely there is. Google Analytics is something that every website owner should know how to use. It is complicated. Websites are just complicated. It's kind of how it goes. We have people in-house that basically could train you, or Eric, we can definitely send you resources as far as how you can educate yourself. And I will have Jen reach out to you to be able to do that. And Jen will also go through that. It looks like on the next, she actually texted back and said, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that on the next webinar to be able to teach you a little bit about Google Analytics and be able to access those things as well. So stay tuned for that one, Eric, for next week. Okay. So guys, really what this boils down to is that your website is easily the most important marketing tool that you can invest in. Being your sales hub, it really is the heart. It's what lands those leads. It's what shows your value, and it's ultimately what brings them to a place where they want to purchase. It is a piece of a bigger system. So, a website might link into a CRM to where those leads can be warmed up over a period of time, especially for services that take thought and kind of digestion to be able to get to. But when somebody lands on your website, you only have a very short period of time to be able to show that value. And so investing into that tool to its fullest ability is definitely recommended. Um, and ultimately, this tool will give you insight into user behavior if it's used properly and if it's set up properly. You'll know what marketing campaigns are working and which ones aren't. You'll know how to invest your money as a result of this. Years back, we really didn't have this. So websites are integral to your business. It's definitely something to invest into heavily. 10th Muse definitely believes in going the custom route with us. All of our websites that basically we produce are on the custom level, but we definitely work with people that also develop themes. And so, consult with us either way. We're more than happy to be able to help you find the right solution for your specific site. And we'd love to be able to always help you out on an individual level. Our consultations are free, guys. Please, go ahead and reach out to us at any time. On this screen, you kind of see how to be able to contact us. If you go to our website, 10thmusedesign.com, you can just click on schedule a meeting and then either choose, Jen, myself, or Kelly to be able to meet with, based off of whatever type of meeting you'd like to have, whether it's related to marketing or strategy or more on the branding type of side. Let me go back to our questions just real quick and see if there's anything else. I would love to be able to answer any questions that you have at this point. So let's see what we have here. I think we have all of the questions at this point. Is there anybody else we can go ahead and unmute or ask questions, or just, type into the text box if you have anything else? Okay. Well, guys, 10th Muse is certainly here to be able to help you. We really see our customers as our partners. It's a long-term relationship that we like to foster. So again, if you have any questions, or if you'd like, for us to be able to look at your website and give you a diagnosis, or if you'd like to, schedule a time to be able to just strategize out what's the next step for your company, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We'd love to be able to hear from you. Thank you so much, guys. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And I will, our next webinar will be 1 week from today, and will be all about digital marketing. So that will cover social media or I'm sorry, not social media. It will cover SEO. It will cover visibility in a lot more depth. So social media will be the final webinar. That will be the 5th one. So that'll be 2 weeks from today. All right, guys. Thanks so much for your time. Have a great day.
Zach, I do have a question.
Oh, okay. Hi, Lucinda. How are you today?
Hi there. Yeah, and I know I probably asked you this before, but just listening to you, the difference between the custom and the themed, it just really does seem, so much better to go with custom. It seems like more quality as a foundation. But I spent so much money on my other one. I'm just trying to think for the future, should I plan on having you, redo it to where it's all custom at some point?
Everybody, Lucinda, is at a different stage of progression with their website. Theme sites just don't last as long. That's one of the faults of them. But that doesn't mean that there's not value to be had with the theme that you have. So it's really looking into an opportunity cost. It's, do I invest in a brand new site right now? It really depends on your brand. Is your,
I don't have yet. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Is your current website doing a good job at reflecting your brand, and is it selling people?
No.
Those are the first 2 questions that I would ask.
Right. Well, I don't have a brand yet,
Gotcha. Yep.
And as far as selling, no, since I've had it, I haven't had it that long, but no, it really has not sold anything. It's a brochure, like you said. I didn't realize that when I did it. When I worked with the guy who developed it for me.
Yeah, no, it is. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of intent to be able to form that into a salesperson. But ultimately, that's our goal. If we can have an automated salesperson out there that when people land on our site are immediately attracted to it and find value,
right,
that are our target audiences, it's working. it's functional, it is converting for us, and there's a return on investment to be had because of that.
Exactly.
It's just, it's forming it into that. We can work with you though, Lucinda, with the site that you have, and just work with the imagery that you have, and work with the copywriting that you have.
Some of the content. Yeah, that's kind of my question, Zach, because I know that the steps are that first I need to go through the branding process with Kelly, and I'm not there yet. So for now, my website is a nice brochure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is what it is for right now. Once we have your brand in place, Lucinda, we're going to understand exactly whether or not that website's working for you or not. There'll be a time that we need to answer these questions.
And so, but some of it could I'm just trying, so that I don't worry, I'm just thinking about it right now. Some of that, like you said, images and copy could be taken and put into a custom website later, right?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In any of the content that basically you invest into, and then we can start to reuse content, throughout different sites. Today's day and age, technology changes so fast, like it's like a 5-year turnaround time typically for websites.
Oh, wow.
You're starting to look antiquated after about 5 years, and you need a refresh of some different type.
But in a custom site that you design, you could take care of refreshing it every few years, right? And keeping it up to date.
We can. Yeah, absolutely. There's, really it's just making sure that it's current with all the coding standards, and that it's current with, with your brand and user interface. Mm-hmm. If you look at, there's this website actually called Time Machine. It's like timemachine.org, I believe. And if you go out to that website, you can pull up Google and what it looked like 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's drastically different than what it is today. Mm-hmm. Pull up any website. It's actually really interesting to see the progression of brand over a period of time as well. Mm-hmm. So if you're a geek like me and like to get out, look at that type of stuff, that would be really fun to do. But yeah, it is a progression. It's always about keeping current with your audience, making sure that your website is a reflection of your brand. And that means that it's specific to your target audience.
And that can evolve over time, your brand.
It should, yeah. As you grow, your company evolves. Yeah. And so this is an ongoing process. This isn't something that's really, it isn't, hey, I built this website, I'm just going to let it sit now for 5 years. It's hey, I built this website. Let's look at this and make sure that it's functioning properly. Is it a good sales tool? How can we adjust it to be that right sales tool? Yeah. And so there is an ongoing process of kind of investing into your tool to be able to make sure that it's performing properly. Exactly. But at that point, you have return on investment, so it makes sense to do it.
Right. All right, Zach, that I feel more at ease now. So thanks for answering those questions. And thank you so much for this webinar. It was very informative, and I learned a lot, and I'm excited about working with 10th Muse.
My pleasure, Lucinda. Thank you so much for attending, and we appreciate you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Is there anybody else with questions out there that I can answer for you? Go ahead and unmute yourself at this time if you do. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic day, and contact us anytime if you need any help. Take care. Cheers.